As they say, marriage is a journey. It usually involves shared experiences, ups and downs, and a lot of compromise. My marriage turned out to be quite the unexpected adventure. It made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. My name is Victoria, and this is my story of temptation, realization, and the subtle boundaries that define loyalty. It all began in a seemingly innocuous way. I met Michael at a charity event. Michael was charming and confident. He had a way of making everyone around him feel seen. He worked in finance, had an impressive background, and was someone you couldn't help but notice. As the night went on, I found myself stealing glances at him from time to time. It wasn't flirtatious, at least not at first. I just found him intriguing. He laughed at all my jokes, nodded at everything I said, and seemed genuinely engaged in our conversation. It felt good to be noticed like that. Sometimes, we get so used to being with our partners that we forget what it's like to be noticed by someone new. As the night drew to a close, I assumed that would be the last I'd see of him. But it seems that fate had other plans. A few weeks later, I ran into him at a cafe. I just ordered my coffee when I heard a familiar voice say, "Victoria." I turned around, and there he was, smiling that same way he had first caught my attention. We ended up sitting together, catching up on what had been going on and chatting about. Michael told me about his travels, his job, and his family. Our conversation was easy and natural, like reconnecting with an old friend. After that, we started running into each other more and more, chance meetings at the park, the grocery store, and even at the gym. It felt like the universe was bringing us together. I told myself it was just casual friendship, but deep down I felt a spark that I hadn't felt in years. One afternoon, Michael invited me to a small art gallery opening. He knew I was into art and thought I'd appreciate seeing the work of local artists. I hesitated. I knew my husband was working late that evening, but I felt like I shouldn't go to the event alone with another man. I told myself it was harmless. It was just a gallery, a place full of other people. Besides, I was just indulging my love of art. The gallery was really impressive. We took a quick tour of the rooms. We looked at the paintings, talked about the artist's techniques, and shared our thoughts. At one point, we stopped to admire this beautiful painting, a serene landscape with vibrant colors and delicate brushstrokes. He leaned in close and said, "This painting reminds me of you." My heart skipped a beat. The compliment was straightforward, but felt very personal and intimate. After the gallery, he suggested we grab a quick bite to eat at a nearby restaurant. I probably should have said no. I should have just gone home. I told myself it was just another casual outing, but I agreed, and we ended up at a quiet little Italian place with dim lighting and cozy booths. It felt a bit too romantic for two friends sharing a meal. We chatted about our lives, our aspirations, and the challenges we faced. He shared things with me that felt deeply personal, and I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't with anyone else in years. As the evening went on, I noticed he was watching me closely, as if trying to read my emotions. I wouldn't say there was a problem between us, but there was a certain tension. I didn't tell my husband about that evening. It felt like our little secret, something I wasn't ready to share just yet. But that one evening was a real game changer. After that, I found myself thinking about Michael more often. I'd find myself looking forward to our coincidental meetings, wondering what it would be like to see him again. One day, he texted me, suggesting we meet up for coffee. My heart was racing. I read his message. Part of me wanted to turn him down, to put an end to whatever was going on between us. But another part of me felt alive, excited by the attention. Before I knew it, I'd typed a quick yes. The coffee date was casual on the surface, but there was a sense of closeness between us, a familiarity that felt both comfortable and risky. He gave me compliments on little things, like the way I laughed, the color of my dress, and the way I listened. My husband picked up on these things, but with Michael, everything felt new and exciting. He asked about my dreams and things I wanted to do, but hadn't yet had the chance. I'd always wanted to travel more and see parts of the world that seemed like distant dreams. He looked at me and said, "You should go for it, Victoria." Life is too short to hold back. There was something about the way he encouraged me that was really inspiring. Over time, I started sharing things with him that I hadn't even told my husband. It was as if he saw a part of me I had forgotten existed. I knew I was on thin ice, teetering on the brink of something that could easily go off the rails, but the rush was unmistakable. Then he asked me to join him for a weekend hike. My husband was away on a business trip, and Michael knew I loved the outdoors. I probably should have said no. I knew it, but somehow I told myself it was just a hike, just two friends enjoying nature as we treed through the forest, surrounded by the quiet beauty of nature. It felt like the world had faded away. It was just the two of us, two people lost in the moment. We chatted, had a laugh, and swapped stories. It was a kind of connection that felt almost surreal. Then, as we reached a clearing with a stunning view, he looked at me with a seriousness that caught me off guard. "Victoria," he said quietly, "I've never felt this way before. I'd never felt this way about anyone before." Those words hung in the air, with a lot of meaning behind them. I felt my heart racing and my mind whirling with conflicting emotions. I wanted to say something, anything, but I couldn't think of the right thing to say. The silence between us was filled with unspoken feelings and desires we both knew we couldn't act on. Standing there in the clearing with Michael's words still hanging in the air, I felt a mix of excitement and unease. This was the real deal. There was no way to deny that our connection was real. Was it just a casual thing, or was it really affecting me? I finally broke the silence. "Michael," I said quietly, "this can't happen. I'm married." He nodded, looking like he understood, but was also a bit disappointed. "I never meant for this to happen," I said. "There's just something about you that I can't get out of my mind. You've brought something back into my life that I didn't realize I was missing." I couldn't deny that he'd done. I felt the same way. My marriage was pretty lonely and all about the routine, which left me feeling like I was just a shadow of my former self. With Michael, I felt like he saw me, that I was alive, and that he understood me in a way I hadn't been understood in years. However, I knew that getting closer to him would risk jeopardizing everything. I finally mustered the courage to step back and say, "I can't keep doing this, Michael. I'm sorry." I thought he'd ask me to think about it some more, but instead, he gave me a gentle nod. "I understand, Victoria. I'm not going to push, but you know you can talk to me if you ever need to." That left me feeling like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. I knew I had to give him some space, and I planned to do so for the next few weeks. I tried to avoid places where we might run into each other, even changed my routine. But then, one evening, he was still on my mind, even in the quiet moments. I was making dinner when my husband came up behind me and gave me a hug. He said quietly, "I miss you, Vic." Those words really struck a chord with me. Here was my husband, someone who'd stuck by me through thick and thin, offering the warmth and love I felt I was missing. I realized then that I'd been looking for that connection I'd felt was fading with my husband. Maybe there was a way to bring some excitement back into my marriage. That night, I decided to be honest with myself and focus on my relationship. I wanted to bring back the closeness we'd once shared to reignite the bond that had faded under the weight of everyday life. I didn't tell my husband about Michael because there was no need to. Nothing had actually happened, but that experience with Michael had kind of woken something up inside me. I came to see that I couldn't ignore it, so I started making small changes. I left my husband little notes and planned date nights. I started sharing more about my own dreams and feelings, and I gradually noticed a change in our relationship. My husband seemed happier and more attentive, and I found myself genuinely enjoying our time together again. But life has a way of testing our resolve. A few months later, I got a text from Michael. He was putting together another gallery event and wanted to know if I'd be there. My heart started racing when I read his message. Part of me wanted to see him to feel that rush of excitement again, but a stronger part of me knew I couldn't go back to that place. The more sensible part of me knew I couldn't go back to that place. I took a deep breath and replied, "I think it's best if we go our separate ways. I need to focus on my marriage." Michael didn't push back. He simply replied, "I understand, Victoria. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors." After that, I never heard from him again. Our connection faded, and over time, I learned to move on from whatever feelings I had for him. In hindsight, I came to see that Michael was never the solution to my problems. He was a reflection of what I felt was missing in myself and in my marriage. By facing up to those feelings, I was able to rebuild what really mattered. I'm stronger and more committed to my husband than ever. I'm thankful for that experience. It made me realize how crucial it is to focus on nurturing the love we already have, rather than seeking it in fleeting moments with someone else. I could have easily lost everything over a passing temptation, but I decided to face my own vulnerabilities and work toward a better, more fulfilling relationship with the man I vowed to love. This story could have ended very differently, but it ends with me holding on to what matters most. My husband was never aware of those near misses or those private conversations I kept to myself. But he never needed to, because in the end, he got back the part of me I'd lost. That was the most important thing.